understanding things on a deeper level,
Mhm.
understanding that one of the major things that are altered in the person's ability to function and also in their mood is they become distant from social and actual face-to-face connections, like conversation, talk. It's not just talk; it's also tasks because the person can no longer move as they wish. Right? I no longer feel like the same person. Whether it's because of addictions or maybe it's just viciously going back and forth between addiction and chronic pain just to find relief. But at the I guess diving a little deeper, I don't know if we have the graphic up, the iceberg, the anger iceberg. That is a very important picture of how this works. Is that to be able to even take that first step to help people in their pain is understanding what lies beneath, right?
Mhm.
Um, when I was growing up in the 80s, there was a famous cartoon. It's became a famous few movies that now, uh, we look back and we're like, okay, that when we know where that came from. It was a saying, this TV show called Transformers. And one of the slogans of the TV show was more than meets the eye, you know? And it was just a
Yeah.
slogan, Transformers, more than meets the eye. And so when it comes to the anger iceberg, it's the same idea
Mm.
that there's more there than meets the eye. What you see at the tip of the iceberg is only a small percentage of what lies beneath all the real issues, right? Usually in the practice of psychology, we talk about anger as one aspect of pain,
Mhm.
and but it's only a secondary emotion. It's not a primary emotion. So whenever someone is angry, we're not just looking at, oh, that's just angry.
Mm.
No, there's something going on. Loneliness. What is it? Is it abuse, abandonment, poverty? What is it? What's going on, right? And if we dig a little deeper, as you will see in the illustration of the anger iceberg, is that people don't understand why you're crying,
Mhm.
right? And so they don't see the loneliness. They don't see the picture below the surface. It's kind of like it works both ways with pain as it does with success. So, for example, if somebody sees somebody driving a nice car, wearing nice clothes, right? Uh, People are quick to judge and kind of make assumptions, and they kind of like, oh, he's got it good or she's got it good,
Mhm.
and they just assume that it just came into existence out of nowhere and you're just lucky or you're just born into whatever it is blessings that you're enjoying, where they don't understand the history of what had to happen for you to have the things that you have.
Mm.
The pain, the bills, the things that needed to happen so that you could wear the nice watch or you can wear those nice shoes. People don't see all that. They don't
Mm.
see all the hours you work. They don't see all the pain you went through. They just see the results. And so my suggestion is we gotta make a little bit more of an effort to dig a little deeper and ask those questions.
And when we talk about people, family members, individuals who are going through that chronic pain,
Yeah,
you mentioned isolation,
yeah,
and it's hard for people to really communicate that they are in pain that's not resolving itself
yeah,
tonight. It's chronic, so it's long term.
yeah,
It changes the way people interact, their day to day life tasks. Everything is changing, and everyone else around them hasn't changed. So they feel very isolated. They feel very
yeah,
vulnerable, and that's something we hear a lot from people: is that no one truly understands what I'm going through. And you have family members that want to help,
yeah,
but also feel like, well, it's that old school thinking mentality
yeah.
of, well, you got to pick yourself up.
Right.
What are you doing for you? But tell us a little bit about that science of pain that makes them feel so isolated. Is
Yeah, I love that you brought that up because I think that this is a worthy conversation. So some researchers have looked into this as far as what are the effects of involuntary isolation. Isolation is a really big issue because the person feels powerless. They feel
Mm.
like they've been forced into this choice that they didn't really ask for, right? And so that sense of powerlessness, we need to talk about that because some researchers have looked into the effects at studying the incarceration and prison systems in the United States just to observe what isolation does to people. And they found a number of things. that uh, really cause concern over, the future of what isolation might look like. The original intent of involuntary isolation or incarceration goes back to the times of the Pilgrims. When they first came to the United States, right? They were kind of trying to get away from the monarchy. And the reason why they were trying to get away from this, among many things, is that punishment under the monarchy was execution. So, because they didn't want that in their new world, they didn't want a repeat of what was going on in the old world, they introduced this idea with good intentions that you isolate someone, it'll cause them to reflect and think over their choices and hopefully rehabilitate them. But in some sense, it has, on certain studies, shown that it actually has backfired in some cases. Now, and in most cases, what we find is that the person becomes emotionally dysregulated when they're isolated most of the time. The limbic system in the brain, this small little structure in the prefrontal cortex of the brain, is a very small little structure that helps us with response, behaviors, and memory. And so when a person is increasingly isolated by addiction, chronic pain, what ends up happening is that they become imbalanced and dysregulated, and in some cases may actually cause the limbic structure to shrink even further, further incapacitating them from being able to make proper choices.
So if
Yeah,
that system shrinks and gets smaller, remind us, what does that system do again?
it helps us with response, which has a lot to do with development.
Mhm.
So you can imagine the stress that causes when the individual goes through something traumatic, right? That leads to wanting to find relief and not always in a healthy way, right? So yes, response, behavior, and memory. Yeah,
So further trauma,
yeah,
isolation
yeah,
leads to the response, the ability to be able to remember effective ways of handling that. That begins to get smaller.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it impacts it.
yeah.
How do you help counter that? I'm a
um,
family member and I see
yeah,
this in my family member. How could I help?
yeah, yeah. Well, they found that one of the reasons they came to this conclusion was because they tried different things like reading, writing, giving inmates different things to do
Mhm.
inside of this kind of environment, and it only helped so much. What they really needed was a social connection.
Mm.
Being able to connect with another person and heal in that manner. Like we said at the beginning, uh, no one really heals in isolation. We heal better together.
Mm.
And I think that's the message for today that I want to get out. That in recognizing what's causing these things and where they're coming from, hopefully it helps us to be more empathetic, a little bit more compassionate in how we approach and understand what's really going on, right? Instead of jumping to the conclusion that you're just lazy, right?
There was a study, and we were talking about this earlier, where they talked about the nervous system being impacted through chronic pain, that taking a medication to help with the pain eventually numbs
Yeah,
some of the circuitry in our nervous system to the point where any small pain that anyone else might think that's not a big deal
yeah,
elicits a really strong pain reaction.
yeah,
So, what the person's feeling is very, very real,
yeah,
and it's hard for other people to understand that, no, I'm feeling this and it's more than a withdrawal. My body's having this pain reaction.
yeah,
So when you work with individuals where their pain is now at that level and it gets triggered so
yeah.
easily, what do you counsel them? What do you tell them or their family members on how to address those moments, and can they heal from that?
Yeah. So I think, man, I wish I could credit the researcher because the name doesn't come up. But there was this study that was done about trauma brain and learning brain, and they did a kind of like a comparison of what happens when there's trauma, right? When there's some incident, illness, or some kind of major event that causes that person to go into flight or fight mode rather than resting mode, right?
Mhm.
Safe mode. So what they found, or what this researcher found in his own work, was that when a child, this is studying child psychology, and that he demonstrated that when a child is traumatized, right, or a person is traumatized, he gave the picture of the jungle, and you have like a little baby elephant. And as long as the baby elephant is surrounded by mama and papa and all of the extended family, they form like this protective barrier or wall, so that the baby elephant can play, can eat grass, and just be a baby, right? And so they have no concern or fear of any imminent threat or danger, because there is a community surrounding the baby, right? So there's no leopard, there's no lion, there's no jackal, there's no predator that's going to break that barrier. What the child psychologist found, and I wish I could quote his name, I want to give him credit, is that maybe it'll come up while we're talking, but no promise, is that he found that as soon as you removed one of those protective barriers, one of those protective measures, like a mom, a dad, or some family member, an immediate gap was visible and obvious to predators, right? And so a breaking of that wall caused the baby elephant to no longer focus on eating grass, playing, learning to be an elephant. It was all about survival mode.
Mm.
It was almost like the baby elephant had its head on a swivel. Kind of this flight or fight, ultra sensitive nervous system. That's another thing that gets hijacked, the nervous system, right? Because that's like the control center, right? And so when the nervous system goes into ultra sensitive type of mode, uh, there is no focus on trying to process information, any new information.
Okay.
Right? So this is why we as parents sometimes struggle, and we're like, what's wrong? Why are your grades so low? What's going on? Because the brain is trying to just survive. It's on survival mode, right? Rather than a learning mode.
And this is the point where we get a lot of families that come in,
Yeah.
but I've tried telling them,
Yeah.
And I've tried to explain, and this is your son or your daughter, choose one or the other.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is that when they're in that survival mode instinct, there's no appeal to rational thought or memory or familial, well, memory, right? When
Yeah.
you're talking about those structures of the brain, they're just surviving
Yeah.
right now. So, this.
Yeah.
I started off by asking questions about, how are they different, chronic
Right.
pain different, but it sounds like they are much more similar than
Yeah. I
different.
think the child psychologist that I'm speaking of, to correctly categorize the way if you want to research it yourself, it's survival brain versus learning brain.
Okay.
So if you want to fact check that, you can. But basically, what it shows or demonstrates is the importance of the community and the importance of being together to heal.
So the concept of community is kind of going back to basics,
Yeah.
right? The idea that you have people around that protect. What other things would be going back to the basics?
Yeah, I would say that another thing that we can do to help is and this is what I do when I do my clinical diagnosis. I try to
Mhm.
do a psychosocial assessment of every aspect of the person to understand the picture of what's going on. So I look at their diet, I look at, different things. I ask them questions about their sleep, all these things. So I would say, let's go back to the idea of the most basic thing. Are you properly hydrating? Are
Mhm.
you drinking enough water? One of the things that has been found in the chronic pain field of studies is that water plays a big part in healing. The benefits of hydrating properly or adequately are among the following: helps with swelling, lower swelling. It helps with digestive problems. It helps with cardiovascular
Mhm.
issues. It helps lubricate the joints. So if someone is properly hydrating, then that means that their body is receiving enough oxygen. And
Mhm.
oxygen produces more red blood cells. And what do red blood cells do? They go to the areas of injury and illness, and they go to work. But if we're not receiving enough oxygen, we're kind of just messing it up in the most basic level. So we're not, and I know not everyone loves water. Okay. So I know that my dad, and I know I've often mentioned him, he was not a fan of water. And my mom would tell him, Oscar, drink more water, right? And he ended up having a kidney issue because he drank not enough water.
Mm.
And so I would say that proper hydration, and also recognizing the signs of dehydration. Do you even know when you're dehydrated? Do you recognize those signs? So if we're talking about healing on the most basic level, it's almost like sometimes one decision, one choice will lead to a domino effect in your overall health as far as improvements. And also, I failed to mention, proper adequate hydration will also help with cognitive skills and memory.
Mm.
Okay. Another thing that we may fail to understand is the power of I think we mentioned this before also, the power of music. Many studies have been shown that uh, by hooking these sensors to the brain and doing different stimuli, using the five senses, right? Um, Visual, smell, right? Hearing, taste, and touch. They found that the one activity that lights up the brain like fireworks is music. Everything else lights up. A part of this right here lights up, a part of this over here lights up, but none of those activities like cooking or, some people love to cleaning, none of them light up the entire brain like music. So I wonder if there's something divine behind that.
Well, it's when we have these conversations, we often get the question like, what can I do? I feel so powerless. I feel exhausted. I feel like everything I'm doing isn't working.
Yeah,
And what you're saying is the person is feeling pain
yeah,
and their body is drawn to trying to heal that pain. And on a most basic level, it's, have you had any water?
yeah,
What's your sleep been like? These
yeah,
very basic things that I guess we never stop to ask.
yeah,
And you're saying that this is part of the basic plan of, this is how you take care of yourself. This is how you heal, how you can think
yeah.
clearer when it comes to these moments.
Yeah, even simple stuff like studies have shown that ginger, if you consume ginger, I know that a lot of people they're not real fans of ginger, but when I eat certain types of food, ginger is natural. Like when I'm eating sushi, I'll have ginger with sushi.
Mhm.
And so that helps you with some swelling as well. Garlic also is a very helpful when it comes to, if you consume garlic in some way or another with your meal, can help you with migraines. And
Oh,
that's a big one. That's a big one because some people just walk around all day with migraines, and because they just can't find relief. Which brings me to something I've been wanting to mention. Is this a good time?
yeah, no, no,
All
no.
right, all right. So
I
in
have
thi-
no idea what Garson's
in
going to say. Well, so yes, it's a good time.
in preparing or thinking about what we're going to talk about today, I was like, okay, where do we start? Right? Like, how do we begin to help people?
Mm,
And we talked about a few ideas, but I'm also a big fan of anecdotal examples of how
mm,
to understand. Last time I brought up the picture of nature, and we talked about movement is life, and we talked about this wonderful bird called the common swift. Well,
mm.
this time I'd like to talk about the buffalo.
All right.
All right. There was this idea for a very long time among researchers and scientists that the Great Plains of the United States were decimated because the bison was removed from its natural environment. And so it led to what we know famously from high school studies, the great dust bowls of the 1930s,
Mm,
right? And the reason why that area became a dust bowl is because the area no longer looked like the way it did when 30 to 60 million bison trampled on the ground back in the 1800s. So by the start of the 20th century, it was just flat land with no grass and no
mm,
trees to help stop the wind, right?
mm,
Since then, the government has made many efforts, like FDR back in the 1930s. He saw the problem and he approved, with the help of the government, to plant a wall of trees down the middle of the country, all the
mm,
way from Canada down to Texas. And that wall of trees was supposed to slow down the wind.
mm,
Okay, but that was only one idea the thing that made the biggest difference, and by the way, the winds, it did help with the winds, the whole tree wall idea. But what really made transformational change was reintroducing the buffalo to its natural environment. And so they gathered hundreds of bison, put them on the highest plains, and let them go to work. And they had this theory, and scientists had this theory that it would be about 20 to 40 years to be able to see any results, see where this is going. And they were nervous because they thought, hey, there's also a likelihood that we're just sentenced them to death because there's nothing out there. How are they going to eat and survive? So they put them out there, and without kidding around, without exaggerating, within about 2 years, great ecosystem changes occurred. And I think I read 2 different examples. So I read one that was in 2014. There was another one that was done in 2019. And even Mexico joined this experiment. They reintroduced the buffalo to its old stomping grounds. And immediately, almost immediately, the ground came back alive.
Okay, how?
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Okay.
Like, what was the magic behind
Well,
that?
they found that when a lot of the seeds, a lot of the natural plants, because back in the old days, the glory of the Great Plains was that the grass levels were as high as a human being, sometimes higher than you or me. Really tall grass that disappeared, and researchers thought they went extinct. It's dead, it's gone. But what really happened was because the buffalo had been removed, the seeds that were left behind went dormant in the ground. And as soon as the buffalo started stomping its old neighborhood, it sent a signal to Earth saying it's time to wake up. And so the seeds popped up. And of course, I'm personifying nature, okay? It's obviously nature is not a person, but I'm personifying nature to illustrate the point that the seeds were reawakened by the movement of the buffalo on the land. And so it signaled a domino effect where the grass came back, and guess what else came back? All of the prey, all of the predators, all of the animals that had left, they came back too. And so all of this is to just say how powerful it is that one decision, when we apply it to chronic pain, addiction, mental health, something as simple as hydrating yourself properly can make worlds of a difference, not in the ecosystem of nature, but in the ecosystem of your body to bring you back. So this, among many things, I'm not saying that hydration is the only thing. You know, the bison, it wasn't that he was just a grazer, okay? He did also fertilize the ground wherever it stomped. So this is just a sign to encourage us. And hopefully this is motivational. That sometimes it's just, and we have this gut feeling that if I do this, maybe something will happen, just like the researchers. If we do this, there might be a chance that we might be able to resurrect the Great Plains. Maybe that's all we need for our own mental health. You know, whether that is, you know, reconnecting with your family, reconnecting with the things that you lost touch with, maybe even your faith, whatever it is that you feel that you've lost touch, and the Great Plains of your mental health have gone dry.
Well, this is a really good point here because I know that there's a lot of people in the audience who are going to have questions on this.
Yeah.
You started off by talking about that this is a multi-discipline approach. You
Yeah.
talked about dietitians.
Yeah.
You talked about the mental health experts, the doctors that are around the chronic pain and around the addiction, and family members are a part of that too. You've
Yes.
given us some good practical steps of how we can encourage our family member. You also gave us a reminder about how isolation can have a drastic impact on when people feel isolated or disconnected or withdrawn, the impact that that has on their overall health and ways for us to be able to kind of cut through that. If when you think of all the stories, and as we're prepping a microphone to walk around here for people to ask questions, when you think of all the stories of all the families that you work with across various addictions, And this being chronic pain, being one of those things that we're working on right now, what's one advice that you would tell that family member to say if they're feeling exhausted themselves over this work and how confusing it can be or difficult? If you could give them one advice on how to care for themselves, what would you say it would be?
I mean, it kind of goes back to the gut feeling, right?
Mhm.
Where it's okay if you need sleep to recharge, sleep. Just
Mm,
sleep, recharge. It's okay to do that as long as there's a balance.
mhm,
Because one of the things that we talked about was the nervous system. When it goes into dysregulation and imbalance, goes into this ultra sensitivity that causes the brain to kind of like not feel safe or okay anywhere, right? So giving yourself that balance where getting proper sleep, where you don't feel shame or, oh, they're just going to judge me because I'm sleeping again. No,
mhm,
no, take the time to rest. I mean, it's a well-known fact that if you get the proper amount of sleep, you're gonna see cascading effects on your entire well-being,
mhm,
right? Now, easier said than done, because if you're struggling to sleep, again, you might consider to consult your doctor, or there's even general knowledge. People that actually have general knowledge about these things passed down from family members, that like things like vitamin D in combination with magnesium.
mhm,
Vitamin D3 helps with proper blood flow, and magnesium helps relax the muscles. So if you combine these two things, you need proper blood flow to heal, right? Because if you're in
mhm,
pain, you're just going to toss and turn left to right all night. So you want to bring that proper blood flow for proper healing or adequate sleep. So then you relax your muscles with the magnesium. So there are different ways to look at this. But again, listen to that that inner voice that's letting you know, hey, it's like your body communicating. Especially when I remember when I mentioned the whole idea of recognizing the signs of dehydration.
mhm.
So, hey, my lips are really dry, and you would just ignore that.
Yeah,
No, take a sip of water. I'm feeling like I'm falling asleep at driving home. I better get some rest, right?
yeah.
So just getting that proper amount of self care.
Yeah, and again, this is a conversation that
Okay.
we don't often hear in recovery circles. There's so much focus on whether it's abstaining from something or dealing with the relational issues that come up, but we don't often hear it signaled of what are the practical things like your body and taking care of yourself. That those can be trigger points, is what I'm
Absolutely.
hearing, and that this is great advice that family members can take with themselves for themselves for their own healing, rest, staying hydrated, but also to the family members who may be having a tough time. And the focus can be many things, but one of those aspects is practical body um, support.
Yeah, I want to leave you guys with this. I told you I was going to reveal this later. I'll reveal it now. So driving up here, kind of, we went through the back road. We went through Wimberley, and so you let me know when you were going to pick me up. You're like, I'm struggling to get through the 35. I'm
Yeah,
struggling,
yeah,
and I'm like, man. And it showed on my. You texted me how long? An hour and 27 minutes. I'm like, wow. And so this is so that you take this with you. So your plan to come down to 35 didn't work out.
right.
So what did you learn? Well, I'm not doing that again. So we went through the back road,
Yeah,
Wimberley, right? And we went up the hill country through Bee Cave and then over here Lakeway. I'm learning all these things because I just moved out here myself too, so I'm learning all the locations. So here's the thing. I've learned that through life, if the plan fails, don't give up on your goals.
mm,
Change the plan. Don't change the goal, right? You got to be flexible in changing the plan. What has life taught us? That if to get from A to B, if there's going to be these barricades and these accidents and these things that are causing frustration and irritability, which are common things with chronic pain, anger, frustration, irritability, and sadness. Those are the four big ones. You're like thinking, well, what do I do? Well, you got to take a detour. You have to. One of the things I learned real quick is even on the days, I used to live in Southern California. You can imagine how horrific the traffic situation was there. I would literally teach myself multiple ways to get home. So because I got tired of going down the same path, so I said I'm going to learn a different path. Usually ended up in some country road. And I'm like, wow, this is a scenic route. I love this. And it would take the same amount of time to get there, but I enjoyed it better. So if the plan fails, don't change the goal, change the plan.
That's wonderful.
Right.
And Garrison, you're being very kind too, because another part of the plan that changed was who was driving. And I remember after that long trip in traffic, I said, Garrison, I hope this isn't too much to ask, but would you drive? And you're like, absolutely. And I got to say, it's just having that, I guess, share that example, having that trust in the community of saying, I need help. I need support. I need some time. I need respite. I think that's also a valuable part of that. So there's so much in what you have shared tonight, and we're not letting you go just yet. And that's why we keep bringing you back, because you bring such great wisdom for us. So
thank you.
we're gonna transition to the portion of our night where we open it up to the audience that has questions, whether you're online or in person. If you have a question, please raise your hand. We have a microphone that's going to be going around here, but you have an expert here with us here. So any questions that you have on this topic, please, by all means. And we got our first question of the night here.
Hello, hey, thanks for coming. So I do suffer from chronic pain, and I'm not one to take medicines, and I also can't take certain medications that people like to take for fun.
Yeah.
So do you have any alternatives for folks that might be dealing with chronic pain that may or may not want to or can't take medications?
Yeah. Awesome. Well, whether you are from the perspective of there is a God or there isn't a God, one of the things that I think the bottom line, whichever side you're on, is that the body is an amazing machine. It's an amazing machine. Has so many complex structures, and it produces its own drugs. It produces its own drug. It's like a chemical factory in there. And these neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, all of these in combination, knowing what triggers what, right? I often, in the practice of my work in psychology, clinically speaking, I talk to patients about sensory-based self-care. And sensory-based self-care is as simple as one method called the 5-4-3-2-1 method. Easy to remember, right? 5-4-3-2-1. And that, what it means is if you recognize that certain stimuli, either through the eyes, through the ears, through the taste, whatever it is, can give you some relief. Now, there isn't an actual answer as far as like this thing, if you take it, you're healed. There isn't that kind of answer. But it is more like this will give you some relief so that you can get your task done, so that you can get what you need to get done for the next 2 hours, right? I'll give you a really, really literal example. So I will never know this experience, but I've been told, and also off of personal observation, my wife, when she had the twins, she was in a lot of pain and she was very thirsty. And she told the nurse and the doctor, I need water, please. And she was in tears. And this was even with epidural. It still was painful. And so doctor said, and nurse said, no, we can't give you water. And so what's my option? But the nurse said, however, we can give you ice chips. Right? And she was like, I'll take it, please. And so they brought her a cup of ice chips and they introduced that to her mouth. And it was like the most beautiful thing. I could see it in her face. It gave her instant relief. Not 100% in the sense of took all the pain away, but it gave her mind something to focus on, right? And so she started, instead of hyper focused on the pain, obsessing over the pain, she put that ice chip in her mouth and focused on the chewing. Okay. And that helped get her mind off of the pain. As intense as it was less intense taking the chips. So this is just a literal example of what can be done. But going back to the neurotransmitters, recognizing what activities, what actions through your eyes, through your ears, through your mouth, through your touch, through your nose that cause you to feel a sense of relief. For example, if you have aromas in your house like lavender, for example, and this is common knowledge for a lot of people, okay, but not everyone has it. There are lavender creams and lavender aromas that help relax the body. It isn't just a repellent. If you didn't know that, lavender is also repellent. It repels bugs. Okay, so if you want those annoying bugs off your body, it'll help repel those bugs. And on top of that, it will help relax your body. So if these suggestions help, I hope it resonates with someone. Hopefully, as an example, I think I may have provided maybe 3 examples of what can be done, but it's not the only things that can be done. And reality is that what we're looking is for, to be realistic, right? Temporary relief. That's really what we're looking for.
Yeah. All right. We have time for additional questions, and we have the microphone going around. So if you have a question, please feel free to raise your hand, and we'll pass that there.
Thank you for being here and for doing such a great job of describing the cycle of chronic pain. I'm going back to the visual that you had about the anger iceberg. And so if you are a loved one or a caretaker and the person that you love is dealing with chronic pain and they are angry, so our tendency when someone is angry, and oftentimes it's what they want, is to be left alone, and you kind of get to the point that you don't want to continue to pursue them, but you know they need help, you know they're in pain, you know they're suffering. What do you recommend to family members as far as dealing with someone who is just kind of obstinate towards you?
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing about irritability and frustration is number one when it comes to chronic pain. And to a certain extent, addiction as well, not being able to get medicated, right? Finding that relief. So one response I would say is being aware of how, because this is all about powerlessness, right? The person feels powerless, right? So how can we aid a family member, a friend, a loved one in trying to help them gain some control, right? Some control over something. Because I've heard patients tell me that sometimes the pain is so bad, like 8, 9 out of 10, that they're like, I can't even hear my own voice. Like, I can't even talk. I can't even process conversation. Like, that's how bad. My mind can't even communicate, right? So what we have to do in those cases is if we control anything, it's how we respond to how the person is coming at us. So having that kind of self-awareness and saying, I see your pain, I see you, and I see your pain, and I'm here, I'm available. You know, because there is a sense of powerlessness, even from your perspective. Even though you're not in chronic pain, you're also feeling powerless. Like, how do I help, right? And so I would say that just being present can make worlds of a difference, because one of the things is loneliness is a big one in chronic pain. Loneliness. So as long as you say, well, I'm not going to be in your space, but I'm available, just shout if you need me. I would say that probably leads to a more peaceful resolution to trying to insist, right, on doing something in the moment. So sorry, we'll wait.
Well, we did say that music is very divine, so and that's a good segue on how it relaxes us.
Absolutely.
So we have time for one more question here. And we got a microphone going here.
Hopefully I answered. Okay.
Thank
you. Hi, thank you very much for your presentation. It seemed to be pretty thorough. Thank you. Did a great job.
Thank you.
I'd just like to ask you, where do you see the power of the Holy Spirit fitting into your system here?
So from a faith perspective, I think I recall, for those that this could help, the writings of Paul when he talks about the body of Christ right? And this is something that even I was able, luckily, I don't, if the word is luck. Some people have problems with the word luck. I would say blessed. I was blessed enough to be trained by Christian mentors at California Baptist University. And when I went to get my studies there, they often brought up the scriptures, and they actually mentioned that modern psychology was inspired by biblical values. And so when we're talking about this whole thing about healing together is better, Paul said that a long time ago. He mentioned the body of Christ and being spirit filled and recognizing, this is where the need is. This is where I need to go, right? This is where I need to focus, right? It's kind of like that instinct of a mother, right? I believe in that God has also aspects of his personality that can come across as motherly or fatherly, right? So one aspect of being motherly is recognizing in the moment is I don't need explanation right now about how you got hurt or how did this happen. I'm just recognizing that you're in pain and I need to be present, and what can I do to help you with the pain in this moment, right? So I am a believer in that the Holy Spirit will prompt you to do that, right? To focus on where the physical or spiritual pain is, and go from there. I remember asking one of my mentors about mental health, and I asked him which parts of mental health are spiritual and which are not spiritual. And he looked at me, and he was already 80 years old, and he said, "All of it is spiritual." And I'm like, "Whoa!" Look, but the way he said it was like it blows your mind, but at the same time, you're like, "Yeah, well, that makes sense, right?" So I think in properly answering the question, I think that sometimes the best thing we can do is because my son brought this up the other day. He's like, "Dad, what do we do with children that have cancer?" That's a big one. I'm like, wow, this kid is really thinking, right? And the best answer I give him is, look, I cannot explain to you why the child has cancer. Jesus was asked, why is this kid ill? Well, was it because the parents sinned or this child sinned? No one has sinned. This is for the glory of God, right? So these are things that God only can speak, why this is. So our part is not to answer the why. Our part is just to say, what am I going to do about it, right? I'm going to break your heart with this one. I saw this clip of this actor who played Santa Claus, okay? And he said he usually would go to cancer hospitals to help children with cancer, to kind of like be there for them. And he had the opportunity to be there in the moment that a child passed away. And he was holding the child. And the child said to this actor, are you going to help me? Right? And all he did was he didn't have any words. He just embraced the child. And the child passed away in his embrace. And that's all he could give in that moment. And sometimes that's all that the Holy Spirit might prompt you to do is give a hug and say, I'm here for you. Right? Sorry, I took it a little too far.
No, you didn't.
Yeah.
You didn't.
Okay.
In fact, this is if you're watching online or you're watching this video or you're here in person, CARES community was built so that people would have a safe space to connect with others in shared experiences. And these experiences where people are confused and might say, I'm exhausted, I'm tired, I love this person, but I don't know what to do. And I don't know if I can find someone who understands that. And this is a community that's been built for that. Garson, you have provided us with practical strategies and interventions, things that we as family members can go to our loved ones to help them and reduce the risk of further addiction or to help provide some healing. You've given us resources to look into, knowledge, but also help build support. And this CARES program was conceived within a church with the idea that many people in faith communities are asking questions about addiction and recovery and are wrestling with how much of it is spiritual, how much of it is biological. And so Garrison is one of the many guests that we've had here who can speak to different areas on this. You've given us a lot to focus on, a lot to continue within this community as we continue to grow. And with good reason, you're one of our popular guests, and we keep asking you to come back because very humbly you have shared your knowledge with us, and we appreciate that. And one thing that we'll do again is with all of our speakers, we'll have this video playing here. So if this spoke to you in one way or another, if this connected with you, we encourage you to go online on our carescommunity.us, share the link. We're on social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and you like, share, subscribe, help get the word out. We congregate here at Cornerstone Church, ATX, here in Lakeway. Monday nights is when we gather. And we're going to put up here on the screen as well, and also on video here, a slide for next week, because our goal is to have speakers every Monday, just like Garrison, who will share their stories and help us out. And next week, we'll have Professor Mayan Herman, who will be talking about children of parents who struggle with addiction. And that's an important topic that's come up quite a bit. And there's a lot to be shared in that space. So if you know someone, or you are someone who is a child of someone who is dealing with addiction, this is one that you don't want to miss. You want to be here, and you want to bring as many people as you know here into the space. So Garrison, again, thank you so much for sharing your time and wisdom with us. Those here live, we're going to stick around here for any questions that you have. For those online, again, thank you for making time to be here with us, and send us feedback, anything that we can do. But we'll always end the same way. If this is your first time in person or online joining us for this experience, we have one simple message for you. Welcome home. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next Monday. Thank you.